This spring, a lot of home gardeners will be going to garden centres to buy their tomato plants, but this is a really expensive way to grow tomatoes. And also, you don't get very much choice over which varieties you grow. Garden centres will usually stock a few common varieties of tomato plants, but they'll have a much bigger selection of tomato seeds. So I want to show you how you can grow your own tomato plants from seed. It's so easy, and I swear that once you've learned how to do it, you'll never buy tomato plants again. So let's get growing. Sow your tomato seeds between February and April. Take a small plant pot and fill it as high as you can with potting compost. Give it a couple of firm taps on the work surface. The weight of the extra compost on top of the pot helps to firm the compost within the pot without causing it to become excessively compacted. Knock off the excess compost and use your hand in a back and forth motion until the compost is level with the rim of the pot. Now take another pot of the same size or slightly larger and use its base to firm down the compost by roughly ½ centimetre. It doesn't need to be perfect, so don't try and measure it. Get your tomato seed pack and pour some into the palm of your hand. You can now sprinkle a few seeds as evenly as you can onto the surface of your compost. Sow slightly more seed than the number of tomato plants that you want. I want 16 of these tomato plants to give to my friends and family, so I've sown 20 seeds. If I was going to sow more than this number of tomato seeds, I would have to use either a bigger plant pot or use more than one pot of the same size. Otherwise, the plants will become a bit too congested when they start to grow. Now cover your seeds with compost and use that same back and forth motion with your hand to carefully knock off the excess compost until it's level with the rim of the pot. Label your pot with the name of your tomato variety. Once they start to grow, they all look really similar, so if you grow more than one variety, you won't be able to tell them apart unless you label them now. Now you need to water your pot. You can do this using a watering can with a rose attachment, but you need to be very careful not to wash away your tomato seeds and compost. Start with your flow of water away from your tomatoes, then quickly pass the flow of water over your pot and pass it to the other side. You can keep doing this back and forth until the pot is wet all the way through. The water should never puddle on top of your compost, otherwise you risk your tomato seeds floating away. If you only have 1 or 2 pots, this method can waste quite a bit of water, so another technique is to place your pots into a saucer and fill it with water. This water will soak up through the compost like a sponge, but it's a good idea to also spray the top of the compost with a spritzer to make sure the whole pot is wet through. Let your pot sit in the saucer for around ½ an hour, don't worry if it's longer, and then move it to a windowsill. North facing is best for germination. I also grow some of mine under low powered grow lights, but greenhouses and conservatories are also popular. Try to find somewhere where the temperature is as consistent as possible and between 15 and 25 degrees Celsius. Having said that, tomato seeds aren't very fussy and will germinate both below and above this temperature range. Keep an eye on your compost. If it starts to dry out before your seeds have germinated, you can spritz the surface of your compost with water. If it starts to dry out after your seeds have germinated, you can sit your pot in a saucer of water for around ½ an hour. When your plants are about this big, it's time to pot them up. That means that each tomato seedling will be transplanted into a pot of its own. I'd recommend potting them into a small pot somewhere between 7 and 9 centimeters in diameter and height. I'm using the same size pot that I sowed my tomato seeds into. Begin by taking your tomato seedlings out of the pot. Give the pot a slight squeeze to release the compost. Turn it upside down and let gravity do the rest. The compost shouldn't fall apart because the roots will be binding it together. You'll need to carefully tease the roots apart as each plant will now be intertwined with the ones next to it. Dropping the pot sideways onto your work surface can be helpful, but you'll need to use your fingers and thumbs too. Be gentle and never hold the plant by its stem, as you can cause long-term damage. Instead, hold your seedlings by their leaves. If the leaves get damaged, it's not a problem. Your plant will grow more leaves anyway. Now put a small amount of compost in the bottom of your new pot and dangle your tomato seedling into it. Lower your seedling so that only the leaves are above the rim of the pot, and fill around the roots and stem with compost. Use your 2 index fingers and thumbs to firm the compost around the roots, while also straightening the plant and getting it as central in the pot as you can. One movement is all it takes. We're not trying to compact the soil, just to remove large pockets of air. Top up the compost and give the pot a little tap. Now label your plants and water them. They can then go back to your growing environment. From this point on, I'd recommend a south-facing windowsill if you have one, because your plants will need as much light as possible and can tolerate a bit of fluctuation. Mine go under grow lights until they're ready to move on to their final position, but frost-free greenhouses and conservatories are even better. Within a couple of weeks, your plant roots should have filled their pot and they'll start growing really fast. Within a month, your tomato plants should be at the stage that you'd normally buy them from a garden centre. I told you it was easy. You can now pot them up to their final pot size or plant them out into your garden. I hope that's helpful. I know that growing plants from seed can feel quite daunting if you've never done it before, but tomatoes are a great one to start with. They're really forgiving and grow really well given half a chance. Good luck!